Coming up, Kyrie makes his debut for the Mavs and Dame's triple-double beats the reigning champs. This is Locked On Game to Game NBA.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Game to Game NBA, local experts going over the biggest stories on the hardwood. I'm your host, Jourdan Black. Thank you so much for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. Just hours after becoming two parts of a three-team trade, the Minnesota Timberwolves and Utah Jazz did battle in Utah on Wednesday, and Minnesota picked up a dominant win on the road. Our Locked On Wolves and Jazz hosts are both in to help recap how things played out.
On a day in which the Minnesota Timberwolves traded D'Angelo Russell and acquired Mike Conley just shortly before tip-off, a shorthanded Wolves team still managed to turn in one of the best all-around performances of the season so far. I'm Ben Beacon, host of the Locked On Wolves podcast, and D'Lo's on his way out. Mike Conley will be in. Hopefully will play for the Wolves this Friday night in Memphis. But in this game, there was no Rudy Gobert out with the groin injury. There was no, of course, D'Angelo Russell being traded. And, of course, Utah was shorthanded too. But this game came 24 hours after the Wolves gave up 146 points to the Denver Nuggets. They scored 143 themselves in this game. Anthony Edwards had a crazy third quarter, finished this one with 31 points. Jaylen Nowell had 20 points in the first half, finished with 30 points, was a phenomenal plus 38 in the plus minus column. Luka Garza had 25 off the bench, and Josh Minott, the rookie second rounder, saw his first extended non-garbage time minutes and turned in a double-double, 12 points, 11 rebounds. There's a ton to unpack this one. Make sure to listen to the post-game podcast. Subscribe to Locked On Wolves for all things Timberwolves.
The Utah Jazz get blown out by the Minnesota Timberwolves 143-118 on a funky night at the Vivint Arena in Salt Lake City. David Locke of Locked On Jazz. The Jazz allow a season-high 143 points and follow the Wolves having lost three in a row. The night, according to reports, is that the Jazz have traded Mike Conley, Jarrett Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, with Mike Conley and Nickeil Alexander-Walker going to Minnesota and Jarrett Vanderbilt and Malik Beasley going to the Lakers in the midst of a three-team deal between the Timberwolves, Lakers, and Jazz. The Jazz would acquire out of this deal the Lakers' 2027 first-round pick, which has been reported to be 1 through 4 protected. In turn, the Jazz, the whole night just had a funky vibe. Players were pulled off the court during warm-ups. Mike Conley was told in the locker room an hour before the game, and in turn, the Jazz seemed to not have the defensive focus they would have otherwise. Minnesota also traded D'Angelo Russell on the same day, and Minnesota wins at 143-118 here in Salt Lake City.
Damian Lillard dropped a 33-point triple-double at home against the Warriors Wednesday, and Portland needed every bit of it in a 3-point win over Golden State. Our local experts from both teams have more after a big home win kept Portland hovering at 500.
A trade right before tip-off and Damian Lillard triple-double. That's all the Trailblazers needed to beat the Warriors on Wednesday night. I'm Mike Richmond, host of Locked On Blazers. Damian Lillard recorded his second career triple-double, and just 5 minutes before tip-off, the Blazers agreed to a trade sending starting small forward Josh Hart to the New York Knicks. Those three players weren't in the lineup, and the Blazers' shooting didn't show up either. They struggled from the outside, but they got to the free throw line for 22 more shots from the stripe than the Warriors and were able to beat Golden State at home. A really nice win. A huge boost from the bench for the Blazers, who got 40 points on 16 of 23 shooting from the reserves. That was the difference in the game. Free throws and bench play, and the Blazers get a really nice win over the Warriors.
Coming up, the Celtics don't have their full roster, but still pick up a dub. This is Locked On Game to Game NBA. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're so excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sportsbook in America. FanDuel is incredible, and if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. That's what it's all about, right? Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. So join FanDuel today, just in time for the Super Bowl, at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Welcome back to Locked On Game to Game NBA. I'm your host, Jourdan Black. Thanks again for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. Kristaps Porzingis made 8 threes on the way to a Washington Wizards win over the Charlotte Hornets to snap that 3-game losing streak. Locked On Wizards recaps the win.
What's going on? It's your host, the real Ed Oliver from Locked On Wizards. The Washington Wizards beat the Charlotte Hornets 118-104. Kristaps Porzingis dominates tonight with 36 points, 9 rebounds, and a career-high 8 threes. Kristaps Porzingis dominated in the third quarter. He scored 18 points, and the Hornets only scored 15 points. So he single-handedly beat the Charlotte Hornets in one quarter in that third quarter. Denny Avdija with a double-double tonight, 20 points and 13 boards. Bradley Beal with a double-double tonight as well, 17 points and 10 assists. DeLon Wright with 10 assists as well. Daniel Gafford with 13 points and 5 boards and a couple of dunks. Just a solid all-around game from the Washington Wizards tonight. Wes Unseld Jr. mic'd up, and the Wizards are back in the play-in now at the 10th spot. Good win for the Washington Wizards. Thank you guys for listening. Hail to the Wizards. Peace.
The Boston Celtics went into Wednesday without some key players active and lost another one in the middle of the matchup against the 76ers. However, Boston still found a way to get the win, and our Locked On Celtics host tells us how it happened.
Boston Celtics super shorthanded, and they lose Jaylen Brown before the half. Still hold on to beat the Philadelphia 76ers in one of their best wins of the season. I'm John Corrales here at the TD Garden, where the story of the game was the supporting cast, because Jason Tatum, though he flirted with a triple-double, did not shoot well at all and had a bunch of turnovers. It was Derek White who had the game-changing block. A 5-point swing early in the fourth quarter would have been a 5-point game, but instead, after a Sam Hauser 3, it was a 10-point lead, and that was the pad that they needed to hold on in the fourth quarter. The Celtics got big contributions from Blake Griffin, who scored 15 points, all on three-pointers. Grant Williams returned and was huge from three, hitting a bunch of three-pointers. His stroke is back. Malcolm Brogdon down the stretch. It was an incredible defensive effort, and everybody made a contribution to win a game like this. Missing Al Horford, Robert Williams, Marcus Smart, and Jaylen Brown for a half is an amazing one, especially against a team chasing them in the standings like Philly was. Huge win for the Celtics, and a type of win that they needed after some recent struggles.
The Pacers played things close but couldn't quite handle the heat in Miami as Jimmy Butler helped put away Indiana in the final minutes. Our host with Locked On Heat recaps the 5-point win at home for Miami.
It was Bam Adebayo, the all-star, leading his team with 38 points in a back-and-forth game that was ultimately decided late in the fourth quarter. I'm David Ramil, the host of Locked On Heat. I could blame the upcoming trade deadline for Miami's up-and-down effort versus the Indiana Pacers on Wednesday, but for the Heat, with their league-leading 38th game decided in the clutch, this has been the norm all season. Miami built a 16-point lead, but the Pacers closed that gap to take the lead of their own in the second quarter, but Adebayo was dominant, taking advantage of Miles Turner's drop coverage for mid-range shot after shot, then mixing up strong finishes at the basket for his game-high 38 points. Caleb Martin also had a career-high 5 steals to go along with 12 points and 11 rebounds. Overall, a solid win for the Heat, and although Martin continues to play well at the forward spot as a starter, it also showed that Miami likely needs to make a move in order to continue their push for home court advantage in the Eastern Conference, especially when the team shot just 6 of 19 from three-point range. But there's also a sense that a good deal might not get done, and that Kyle Lowry, who missed tonight's game due to injury, will remain on the roster past the deadline, and that the Heat will have to find a way to keep winning one clutch game at a time. For a recap of tonight's game, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Heat.
Pacers drop another one. They're now 1-3 since Tyrese Haliburton returned, this time falling in Miami to the Heat 116-111. And the Heat have done the best job of any team in the league at slowing down Tyrese Haliburton. They did it again in this game. Haliburton, 37 minutes. He only gets up 8 shots, 11 points and 10 assists for the Pacers All-Star. Miami held him to 1 point earlier this season, and that makes it hard for the rest of the Pacers to do anything. The Pacers truly did play pretty well beyond that. Buddy Hield, 29 points. He made 6 threes. Miles Turner had 21 points and 10 rebounds. Those guys were great. TJ McConnell had a fantastic game with 18 points off the bench. But without their head of the snake running things on offense, it's tough for the Pacers to get going. And it was again for them in this one. They fall to 25-31. They're down to 12th in the Eastern Conference now. They need some wins. They need a boost. And they need to find a way to get Haliburton going in games like this. We'll break it all down on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
And that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Game to Game. Thank you so much for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On NBA and to your team's Locked On podcast on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jourdan Black, and this has been Locked On Game to Game.